Hi, everyone. Oh, can you hear me? Yes. Before I start off, I just have to apologize. I've got a little bit of a cough, so if I cough, I will try and cough away. So to kick off, if you've ever spent any time in Hong Kong, you've walked down Hennessy Road or DeVoe Road, probably without giving them much thought. But Mark O Neill has thought a great deal about them and discovered that they're named after 2 of the 9 Irish-born governors of Hong Kong. That's the kind of history his books keep turning up, hiding in plain sight, legible only if someone takes the trouble to look. Mark has spent nearly 5 decades doing exactly that. Born in London, educated at Oxford, he arrived in Hong Kong in 1978 as a journalist and never really left. Over 30 years, he reported for Reuters, SCMP, and many others, from Japan to India, Taiwan to mainland China. Then in 2006, he turned to books, and now has completed 20 of them. 21st book. Several translated into Chinese. So he writes in 3 languages, English, French, and Chinese. His 2 newest books, these 2, they form a companion set, I'd say. A portrait of Hong Kong, painted through the eyes of the outsiders who contributed to building the city, Europeans in Hong Kong. Covers 5 continental communities, German, French, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese. The Irish in Hong Kong follows missionaries, governors, nurses, and teachers who shaped the city and left their names on its street. I think everybody knows. So please welcome Mark O Neill.
Well, thank you all for coming. I thank Mariana very much for making time to chair this session. And of course, I must give a very big thank you to Ricardo Pinto and his staff for arranging this wonderful festival in this superb venue and for finding the time to give us a platform. As you know, for an author, it's very difficult for us to find our readers and to sell books to them. So I've discovered the very best way is what we are doing today, where you have an event, you tell people, you bring people in, and you have a chance to speak to them directly. So I thank Ricardo very much, and I hope next year I can meet you all again and I can introduce to you another book. So, back to Mariana.
Back to you. So, Mark, you've been in Hong Kong for nearly 50 years and could have written these books at any point. Why now? What made this the moment to get these stories down on paper?
Well, this book was born. This book was born when the Irish Consul General, not the current one, but the one before, he approached me and he said, shall we write a book about the Irish in Hong Kong? And we both agreed that there wasn't such a book in the market. There were biographies of individual Irish people, full-length biographies, but we found nothing which was about the Irish contribution to Hong Kong, you know, from the beginning until now. And he graciously gave me 10,000 euros to do it, which in our world, the world of authors, is a substantial amount of money. And then COVID arrived. So he couldn't be a diplomat because nobody was going and nobody was coming. So actually, I should have put his name on the front because he did a great deal of research. He found out many people that I hadn't known about. So that book came about thanks to his initiative. And they've only had a consul there for about 10 years. So there was no consul there before who took note of this. So I think that's why the book has come out now. Now this was commissioned by my former editor at Joint Publishing, who published all my early books. And her thinking was that Hong Kong is a diverse society with many different races and different religions and different peoples, and that we should give respect to all of them. So I did a book for her on the South Asians, so that's Nepalese, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, India. We published that in English and Chinese. So then she said, let's do one on the Europeans. So I thought, this is a very good idea. So we wrote that. But unfortunately, just after we completed it, she had a big row with her boss, and she left joint publishing. And the new boss didn't want it. So the book became an orphan for about 2 years. So I'm very grateful to Earnshaw Books for taking the book in and publishing it. Thank you.
To continue talking about that a little bit, so there's a tradition of historians writing against forgetting, putting things on the record precisely because records are fragile, right? Do you see your own writing, these two books, following this tradition? And could you talk a little bit to that?
I think for this book, I would say yes, because the missionary orders in Ireland have good records. So we have quite a lot about the missionaries in this book. But for the other people, there was very little material. I mean, there's newspaper articles or there's some random interviews. So I think this will have quite a long-lasting life, this book. It's new material. With Europeans, it's very much the same. Again, the missionary orders have very good material, and I'm very grateful to them because they provided a lot of excellent material. But other people know. So I think we've made a contribution. We've added some new information, new material that was not available before.
Brilliant. To go back to the part on the intro, so 9 Irish-born governors of Hong Kong. Their names on the city streets, Devoe Road, Hennessy Road. Most people walk past these streets every day without knowing. Why has that story stayed so invisible until now?
What day is Friday? Not Friday, Tuesday. Next Tuesday. What day is next Tuesday? Right. That's Ireland's National Day. When did Ireland become independent? More or less? 1922. So that, I think, is the answer to your question, because before 1922, Ireland was legally part of the British Empire. So all the citizens of Ireland were legally British citizens. Now, as you know well, many of them didn't wish to be British citizens, and there was a great debate, and there was wars about this question. And after 1922, it became a state. Irish people became Irish citizens. But this ambiguity of where you belonged continued. So in World War II, for example, thousands of Irish soldiers volunteered for the British Army. They didn't have to fight in the British Army. They volunteered to fight for the British Army. And in Hong Kong, we had an Irish community then, about 350, 400 people. And the Japanese military said to them, okay, you're Irish people, you are neutral in the war. You are not a combatant. What do you want to do? So slightly less than half decided we will stay with our British colleagues who they worked with, and they were all put in the Stanley POW camp and other detention centers. Now, why was that? Because they felt a strong sympathy with their colleagues. They thought the war would not last very long. They didn't want to lose their job. They didn't want to lose their pension if they decided not to go. Do you see the dilemma they had? They were Irish citizens. They didn't have to go there, but they decided to go there. And the other Irish people in Hong Kong, which would be business people, priests, and so on, now they decided to stay out. So they were left alone by the Japanese. But of course, those of you who know the history of World War II in Hong Kong will know, actually, the first group made the right decision, because in the camp, there was always food. Not much of it, and rationed. Not high quality, but there was always something to eat. as the war went on, 43, 44, there was no food to eat in Hong Kong, and the conditions became worse and worse, and starvation and many terrible things happened. So actually, the ones who stayed out didn't make the right decision. But I just want to give you as an example of this ambiguity of whether Irish people are Irish or British. So, sorry, it's a long way to answer your question. It's that people saw these street names, and I'm not sure, is this a British official or is an Irish official or blah, 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 you know. So that is exactly what the consul said to me in our first conversation. We sat down. He said, Mark, I've only been here for 6 months, but you know what I observed? I've seen all these road signs, these all Irish people, so we should write a book about them. So that's what struck him first. So only then we start to research all the lives of these people and what they did in Hong Kong.
Let's dive into the book then. One of the most extraordinary stories, actually, we were talking about on Friday, are the French nuns in the 19th century adopting tens of thousands of abandoned Chinese girls. It's the image on the cover. Why did you feel like that was a story that was the right way to open up the book?
Well, in my humble opinion, the contribution of the missionaries to Hong Kong, and I think to Macau also, was the most virtuous and the most glorious thing which the Europeans did here. Now, of course, the colonies existed for the benefit of the mother country. The British people, the Portuguese people here, they had a great privilege. They were able to make a great deal of money, do things here they couldn't do at home, which clearly benefited them at the expense of the Chinese population. But I think the work of the nuns in saving these thousands of girls, and the Italian nuns saved about 80,000. So in total, it's 120,000 abandoned children were saved. Then they built hospitals, they built schools, they built hospices for old people. They did a lot of welfare work. And they did it for no material gain. They were not paid to do this. The funding of it mostly came from Europe. You know, French congregations, Italian congregations, every Sunday going to Mass would put some money in the collection box. And this money was used to build places where these ladies could live and to feed them and clothe them and educate them. And I think this is a very wonderful and, as I said, the most virtuous thing that we have done in Hong Kong and Macau. So that's why I put it on the front page, and that's why we give a lot of coverage to the missionaries in both this book and in the Irish book. And the most outstanding group in this book were Columban nuns, and they left Europe in 1949, and they were supposed to go to Wuhan. They had a mission there in Wuhan, but while they were on the sea, the PLA conquered the mainland, and Mao expelled all the missionaries. So the nuns came to Hong Kong, and they went to the Rottenji Sanatorium in Wan Chai, and they were given the job of curing Hong Kong of tuberculosis, which was the #1 killer at that time. And that's what they did. They succeeded in bringing down the tuberculosis rate in a dramatic way. I mean, it took a long time, but they did it. And again, not for any material benefit. The two nun doctors that we write about, they lived in the hospital. They didn't go home because the treatment of TB then was very complex and difficult. So you had to monitor the patients all the time. So if they go home, of course, then they couldn't do that. So I think that's a very glorious, virtuous, I want to say, very virtuous thing that they did for Hong Kong people.
Beautiful. You were talking about schools, hospitals, welfare institutions, many still running today. Do you feel that that's a specifically European story or something that could have only happened in Hong Kong?
Oh, no. I mean, my grandfather, he was a missionary in Manchuria, in northeast China, for 45 years. And I also wrote a book about him. Anyway, in my research on his life in Belfast, I met some elderly missionaries. And I said, why did they all go to Manchuria? I said, was it vocation? So they said, yes. On the one hand, it was vocation from above, that they had to go there. But a second factor was a sense in Europe, in second half of 19th century, that Europe had plundered too much from its colonies. You know, Europe is supposed to be civilized, advanced race. And they've gone to Africa, they've gone to Asia, they've gone to China, and they have greatly benefited in a material sense for themselves, for their companies, for their country. And so there was a strong sense in Europe and in Ireland that if we are an advanced race, civilized race, we must give to these people as much as we have taken from them. So I think this was a very strong motive for all these missionary orders that in Africa, in India, in Asia, I think it was the same. It was the same incentive. The difference was that if you're in India, India is a Hindu country. If you're in Malaysia, Malaysia is an Islamic country. China is a Buddhist, Taoist. It has many religions. But Hong Kong was a British colony. So for the missionaries, actually, that was very convenient because it means you had no religious obstacle. You had no group saying they shouldn't be here. Who's this God they're talking about? No, you didn't have that. And the British government, I suspect Macau government too, they didn't want to bother themselves too much with the affairs of the common people. You know, schooling and medical care for the population, rather a headache for them. So here, these people arrive and say, we will build schools, we will build hospitals, we will manage them. I mean, for the colonial governments, this was Christmas came immediately. So they were delighted to allow these schools and hospitals to run. And in Hong Kong, what they did was the government gave a subsidy to the school. This enabled them to provide education for a very low fee. And they were all run and managed by the missionary orders. And the government didn't have to do anything. So, sorry, Mariana, what was your question again? I'm getting lost.
It was about basically could have only happened in Hong Kong.
No, so I'm just saying in Hong Kong, the conditions then were actually ideal for the European missionaries here. They didn't have the obstacles they faced in China, Japan, India, Muslim countries, where they wanted to do the same thing. But of course, the local people, the local religions objected or misunderstood what they were doing, and there was a lot of friction, but it didn't exist here.
Wanted to turn the conversation into the Portuguese community for a second, given that half of the room is Portuguese here. So the Portuguese community in Hong Kong came largely not from Portugal, but from Macau over generations. What did that give them that a community arriving directly from Europe would not have?
Well, I have to be careful with what I say here because I think you know this history much better than me. But from what I understand, when Hong Kong was set up as a major trading port, shipping port, export port, and so on, for many Macau people, this was a very promising place. They had job opportunities and salaries that they didn't have here. So they moved from Macau to Hong Kong. And so, of course, they've been there longer than any other European community there because most Europeans came for a period and then left, whereas the Macanese people stayed all the way through. So I think they benefited in a material sense. They were able to send their children to schools there. They had a better quality of life than they had here. But from what I understand, to some extent, they lost their Portuguese identity to some extent, because in World War II, like the Irish, they had the choice of not being imprisoned. The Japanese did not imprison them. So as I understand, many Portuguese came back to Macau, and the governor at the time was extremely generous. He opened the door, he found places for them to live, and he did a wonderful thing, even though these people were actually second, third, fourth generation Portuguese, and some of them couldn't speak Portuguese, but he let them in. So if I could just say a little bit about their role in Hong Kong. As I'm sure you know, Hong Kong was a caste system, like in most colonies. So in the top, we have the British elite, the business elite, the very wealthy Chinese. At the bottom, we have working Chinese people, workers, farmers, servants, and so forth. And in the middle group are the Portuguese, because they're the only ones who can speak English, who can speak Chinese dialects. They can be a buffer, middleman between the two. So they had a really critical role in the efficient running of Hong Kong. So in the banks, trading companies, other institutions, they were there. But unfortunately, as you know, Britain is a very class-conscious society. So it was only a few Portuguese who were able to, as we say, break the glass ceiling and become judges, join LegCo, get very important positions, because most of the people in the elite class, they want to keep the jobs for themselves.
So at the time, were they treated as European by the British, or something? A different class entirely?
It's very hard to answer that question without saying non-PC words. From my understanding, they had good salaries, good job prospects, stability. They lived in good quality apartments. They had servants. They had their own social clubs, churches, restaurants. I mean, they had a good quality of life, but it was their quality of life. Do you understand? So, as I said, only a few managed to break up. So I'm sure you know Jose Braga was one of them. He joined LegCo, which is the lawmaking unit. So he obviously did join the elite. So some became high court judges and very senior people. But a majority would be in this middle group. Yeah.
Right. So now both cities, Hong Kong and Macau, have returned to Chinese sovereignty. What do you think the Portuguese legacy means going forward? Not as nostalgia, but as something living. Is it still shaping, you think, how the cities see themselves? Well,
today, my wife and I were very honored to be invited for lunch by Mariana's father, Gonçalo. He took us to this very nice Japanese restaurant. And what was on the other side of the street? It was a Catholic school with statues of many saints looking over us, guarding us from our sins, and our evil thoughts. And Gonçalo said that in Macau, the Catholic schools are still very desirable. Now, the situation in Hong Kong is very much the same. The Jesuits set up Huayan College. There's 2 branches of it. The LaSalle brothers set up 2 colleges, one in Kowloon, one on the Hong Kong side. And these are very eminent secondary schools. Many parents want their children to go there. So, yes, the cities have returned to Chinese sovereignty. The number of European teachers or nuns or priests in these establishments is very few. I don't know about Macau. But the institutions they've set up are flourishing. And the esprit, the Catholic esprit that they were set up with, are still there. I can tell you this because I know 2 LaSalle brothers from Ireland. They're both over 80, and they live in one of these schools, and they're active in a sort of supervisory role. So I asked them, I said, is this still LaSalle's college that you set up? And they said, yes. So the way the school is run, the philosophy of the school is exactly the same as the one which they established. So they're very, very happy about that.
Well, on Friday, we spent a good chunk of time also speaking about this lady. I wanted to talk about her a little bit. So she's now the most famous Irish person in Hong Kong. I'm sure everybody knows her, right? Christopher. Yes. The famous Olympian swimmer. I butcher her name, I'm sorry. What Mark said. Born in Hong Kong to a Dublin father, speaks Cantonese, Mandarin, English, won silver at the Tokyo Olympics, and basically loved by the city in a way that very few athletes ever are. You were sharing an anecdote on Friday. Can you share that about the Irish and the Hong Kong cheering for her? It was just such a beautiful vision.
I mean, Siobhan is an astonishing person, because at the Paris Olympics, we were all hoping she'd win the gold medals, because she had two already, from Tokyo, silver medals. So 4 years later, we're in Paris. So, you've got two silver already in your cupboard. So now is the time for the gold medals. So in the stadium in Paris, in the swimming stadium, we have a Hong Kong cheering team over here, and we have a Dublin cheering team. So it's Gaio, Horsey Poet. That's her Cantonese name. And then the relatives from Ireland are saying, go for it, Siobhan. Can you imagine two different groups? But the sad story is that she and the other two, a Swede and Australian ladies, were completely neck and neck in the final 50 meters. You could not tell them apart. The whole of Hong Kong was on the edge of its seat. There were big TV screens set up everywhere, in shopping malls and hotels, and we were all watching this. So there they were, the three ladies neck and neck. So we come to the finishing line. Now, Swedes are all 7 foot tall. Australians are all 7 foot tall. So, of course, these two ladies put their final hand and touch the end. And Siobhan's father is tall, but of course her mum is a Hong Kong lady, so her arm is not as long as that of the Swede and the Australians, so she ends up with the bronze medal. But for us, it was the equivalent of the gold, because she reached that point at the same moment that they did. Yeah.
When you were writing about her, did you feel like she was a culmination of the Irish story in Hong Kong, or the beginning of a very different chapter of the Irish in Hong Kong?
I prefer to say it's like joint venture, a Hong Kong-Irish joint venture, because I once met her parents at a social function, and her father's accountant, doesn't speak much, and her mother is what we call a tiger mother, a good deal smaller than her husband, but she spoke a great deal. And I asked her about Siobhan's upbringing, because what's most amazing was she went to a Hong Kong school, and as you know, Hong Kong schools have very heavy workload, exams, homework. You must learn Mandarin, you must English, you must learn many subjects. So I said, how on earth could she do that and also train enough to remain internationally competitive swimmer? So her mother explained her daily schedule to me. She'd get up very early, she'd have breakfast about 6, she'd go to the swimming pool for 2 hours of training, then she'd go to school, she'd go through all the classes, like everyone else. Then everyone else goes home, she goes back to the pool for another hour or two, then she goes home, and of course she has to do the homework, which they do. So it's this iron discipline. And then she goes to University of Michigan, which has a very good swimming program, and she gets a degree in psychology. So now she has a very excellent career ahead of her. I mean, she could go on swimming, or she could go into another career. She's a very intelligent, very capable lady. And another thing I remember is at both of these Olympic events, the swim would end. She comes out of the pool. I mean, she must be completely exhausted, physically exhausted, mentally exhausted. She puts a towel around her neck. She walks over to the TV cameras. So we've got a guy from Continental and Celtic in Beijing. 怎么样?怎么样? So she would reply to them in Mandarin. And then TVB reporter would say, 點樣啊? 冇金牌,點辦啊? And she would answer that. And then the SCMP reporter would say, you didn't get it, you know. And she would reply with such poise and, is a very good answer. And I found this very impressive. And I shouldn't say this, and I hope we don't have too many machines here, but a lot of this time in Hong Kong, things were very difficult. There's a lot of disputes in Hong Kong and tensions in Hong Kong. So, to my thinking, she was like a kind of, what do I say, a breath of air, you know, bringing a light to this darkness that we were in Hong Kong, all this fighting we were doing with each other. So I perhaps I'm reading too much into it, but I think she had a very good function at that time, doing something for Hong Kong, succeeding for Hong Kong, and succeeding for everyone in Hong Kong.
That's beautiful. Mark, so now you've written about the Irish, you've written about the Germans, the Portuguese, the French, the Italians, the Spanish. Is there a larger argument forming across all of these, something about what Hong Kong does to the people from other parts of the world and vice versa?
Well, I think all of us, you know, Guaylo in Hong Kong, we are very grateful because we have been able to do things, see things, experience things, which we never could have done in our home countries. We have been transformed by it. I was once on a bus in London, and there was a lady next to me, and you know I like chatting. So I said, she was about 55 or so. I said, "How are things? You know, how's life? You know, how's the inflation? I mean, just whatever you talk about to anyone." And she said, "What about you? You from South Africa?" So you are transformed. I mean, you're changed. You don't really belong there anymore, you know. So we gained a lot, and I think in a sense you gain, but you lose. You lose. Yeah, I think it's very difficult to go back. And most expats I meet here or in Hong Kong, and I ask them, you know, will you go back? Of course, some will do if they have very strong family links. But most, I would say, won't. They'll stay here, or they might go to Thailand or Malaysia or Sri Lanka, I mean, another Asian venue. But they won't go back because they've been changed, and so they don't feel completely comfortable there.
Pivoting a little bit, I mean, you've been here for nearly 50 years. What has it been about Asia and Hong Kong that has kept you here? Besides your lovely wife.
Of course, the most important reason, of course, is my lovely wife. Well, we have seen the world transformed. I mean, you know, I went to Beijing in 1985, and near where I lived, in the diplomatic area in Beijing, there was a big shop called the Friendship Store, which had imported goods in them. And local Chinese could not enter the store. Only foreigners or overseas Chinese with foreign passports go in. And you couldn't use renminbi in the store either. There was another currency we had to use. So whenever we went in there, there were Beijing people standing around it, full of anger. You know, this is my city. There are nice products in there which I want to buy, and I can't buy them. And these people who've been here for 6 months or 3 months, they can go in there and buy them. You know, and they were quite right to be resentful. And so what we would do to help our friends is they'd give us a lot of renminbi, and then we'd go in and buy the Sony television or the Hitachi radio, whatever they wanted, and we would give it to them. So they managed to get it anyway, but you needed to know somebody to do that. So that's 1985, right? So now, I'm sure you all go to Hong Kong and you go to Canton Road, and what do you see? You see all these very expensive brand stores, Hugo Boss, Armani, Louis Vuitton, and what do you see? You see a queue of people outside the door, and they're all from mainland China. Not a single Guaylo among them. And of course, we don't have the money to buy the things in there. So it's just the complete opposite of what it was. So it's only what, 40 years, 50 years? So this is the transformation we have witnessed. So it's not just mainland China, but in Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Southeast Asia, and we've been a witness to this. So I think it's an astonishing experience to have had, which had not at all, nothing to match it in Europe or in North America.
And that's a great segue because, I mean, the future is also the Greater Bay Area, right? And the Greater Bay Area vision puts Macau, Hong Kong, and the 9 cities and mainland China in an integrated economic zone. So what do you think if an European arrived in the region today, not as a missionary or a merchant, but as an entrepreneur or a professional, what does their story look like today?
Well, I first of all have to quote President Xi Jinping, who often says, 东升西降. You know, the East is rising and the West is declining. He says this very often. Okay. So to answer your question, when I came, there were many opportunities, many things that we could do here, which we can't do now. I mean, before I came here, I had advice from a guy in Ireland where I was working. He said, Mark, you should go to Hong Kong. I've worked there for 8 years. It's a great place. You should go work there. You will have jobs that you don't deserve. I didn't understand, of course, what he was talking about. But when I got here, of course, I did understand. Because it was a colony, whites had privileges, jobs were closed to Chinese because they were Chinese, jobs were open to whites because they were white. Now, that's all changed, and the economy has been transformed, the educational level has been completely transformed. So Chinese, Taiwanese, Japanese, Koreans, they're highly educated, many have been educated abroad. North America, Japan, Europe, they've come back here, they're multilingual, they have a lot of technical and professional skills. So the problem for the Guaylos like us now, we come here, well, what do we have to offer? What skills do we have which are not available in the market? And since mainland China is such a big market, you know, speaking Putonghua is not a requirement for every job, but for many jobs. So, of course, that puts the foreigner at immediate disadvantage. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's still a place, well, I hope there's still a place for foreigners here. But I think the bar is greatly increased, and the foreigner should ask himself, what have I got that's special, that's new, that's not available in the market, you know? And when I get here, I should work hard to sort of catch up with the competition around me if I'm going to survive.
Mark, what is your hope for both of these books? And do you have any particular stories you would like to share with the audience today? Or can we, I've been told that we have to open up to Q&A because we both speak a lot, apparently.
Well, this is the fourth book I've written about Ireland. So I sent the previous 3 books to the president, and he kindly sent me a letter of thanks. And I have the 3 in my apartment in Hong Kong, and I'm very proud because it's on the presidential note paper. So this one I also sent to the new president, President Connolly, who took office in November. And I said that Louise and I will be in Dublin in July, and we'd love to visit her and give her a briefing about the achievements of the Irish people in East Asia. And she's a new president. She's very busy. She has a lot of things to do. You know, Ireland's president of the EU in the second half of this year. So far, no reply from President Connolly. But anyway, that's just first on my wish list. During our visit, we could go to the presidential palace and meet her and have a discussion, take some photographs for our Facebook page. And, you know, you don't get these opportunities very often in life. So maybe this is the last opportunity, unless I can come up with an even better book. So, yeah, that's my main wish for this book. And so anyway, let's have the questions.
Anybody have any questions? Gonçalo, I believe you had some, and also the gentleman next to it.
Hello, Andrew Higgins. Mark, did any of these governors of Irish heritage feel or express any national aspirations for Ireland at the time? Or were they entirely British?
I just want to mention, this is my good friend Andrew Higgins, whom I've not seen for 10 years, 20 years. And I'm very touched that he found the time to come here. I mean, he travels a lot for his reporting. Anyway, so thank you for coming. Andrew, you asked the very best question, the most incisive journalist question. Because there were 9 governors, and you are quite right, and 8 of them belonged to this, what we call Anglo-Irish aristocracy, owners of land, privileged people, many of them educated not in Ireland but in England. They would certainly not have an Irish accent. And if they were sitting here, and we said to them, Governor Bowen, are you Irish? They would probably become angry and say, no, I'm British. But one of them, Hennessy, as of Hennessy Road, he was the exception. So he's the one who's had a biography written about him just recently, a very good, because he's such a controversial and a dramatic story. Now, he's from Cork. His family were nationalists, but we should say home rule. I mean, they were, that's, 1880s, 1860s, it was home rule more than total independence. Anyway, he was Irish nationalist family. Very, very clever. He becomes a barrister, and he meets Disraeli. This is the key moment in his life. Now, as you know, Disraeli was nominally Anglican, but actually was Jewish. But he somehow becomes the Prime Minister of Britain. So he's an outsider who, through his skill, talents, has made it to the top of the very rigid British class system. Anyway, he and Hennessy hit it off. I think Hennessy sees someone like himself, Oh, sorry, one more thing to say about him. He became the first Catholic MP. In those days, because it wasn't a real election, it was a sort of fake election. Only the property owners who had so much land were able to vote, so there were maybe 50 elected. Anyway, he was the first Catholic MP in Westminster. Anyway, he and Disraeli become very friendly, and his personal life is rather chaotic. He runs up a lot of debts. So he goes to Disraeli and says, what the F-U-C-K can I do now? I've got all these debts, I can't pay them. So Disraeli says, fine, we'll send you abroad into the colonial service. So off he goes to West Indies and then Southeast Asia as a very senior administrator. And in all these places, of course, he sees Indians, he sees Malays, And of course, he sees them as Irish. What is going on here? This small British elite is prospering and exploiting this large number of native people. So he implements policies which benefit the native people. And of course, the elite, the business, the white elite, the business people are enraged and they don't like him at all. So finally, he ends up in Hong Kong, and the same thing happens. So he implements various policies to assist the Chinese people of Hong Kong. And the British elite and the British civil servants, they despise him. And, you know, the famine in Ireland was 1840s. And the aftermath of the famine was so severe that every year they have an Irish disaster fund. People are asked to give money to help the victims of the famine and their descendants. So when Hennessy was here, the Chinese communities of Hong Kong donated thousands of Hong Kong dollars to this fund, whereas the wealthy, you know, white companies and white people here donated just a very small amount. Anyhow, we have to say he wasn't a very good governor, because whether you like it or not, Hong Kong was a white colonial society. So if you're going to run it, you have to be able to deal with this white elite and run it successfully. And he was not a good administrator. He was not very good personally. He fell out with judges and high officials. So finally, they managed to get him posted to another place. And normally, when the governor leaves, you know, it's a big deal. You know, many people go to the pier to see him off, and there's a band from the military, and people give gifts and pennants and so forth. Well, the Chinese societies did all this. They all went to the pier and they gave him nice mementos of his time and tributes to his work for the Chinese people, but not a single British or white person went. He was only seen off by the Chinese. So, Andrew, I've given a long answer to your question, but he was the one exception. And he shouldn't really have been governor at all. It was only because he knew Disraeli and Disraeli was looking out for him. And so he was the exception to the rule.
We will take quick questions. If not, we will take...
The problem is he's not quick, Mark. Mark, I know you for 45 years. You have written a lot about Macau, about the cities in the Great Bay Area. You write about Europeans in Hong Kong. I feel sad because I'd like to see Europeans and Chinese in Macau. I think it's time for you to do it, Mark, because Macau has a great story too. And you have been researching, you wrote for Instituto Internacional de Macau a small book about personalities of Macau that make the city grow. Come on, as a friend, probably, I think this is your next step. Do something for Macau. Macau has been doing a lot for you. Take care, Mac.
Thank you very much, Gotthard. That's a very wonderful proposition. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And please help me thank Mark for his time. And yes, and for the wonderful books. Just a little reminder, the books are here to be purchased. You can get them here, but please pay upstairs. So you can pick them up here, pay upstairs. Pick them up here, pay upstairs. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.